standard of care that we operate in. Most of these slides I cobbled together, and I apologize to Ken Deichwald. Most of you probably read some of his stuff on age wave. He's sort of the forward thinker in the country. He and the guys at the MIT Age Lab up in Boston about what the next generation of senior housing would look like. And really, I'd like to take just a few minutes and pierce some of the mythology that's out there about who our customers are, if I could. Oh, got the wrong flipper. Let's see if I can make this work. Some staggering numbers. 2/3 of all the people who have ever lived past the age of 65. 2/3 of all the people in the history of the world who've ever lived past the age of 65 are alive today. So it's a graying population. Now the curve, I'm 58. The curve, I mean, all the guys on Wall Street, you know, they always write this age wave stuff. The curve actually grows at side of 2 to 4% until my crowd gets there. Then when we get there, it is a rat through a python. It is, I mean, it is a huge swallowing of an enormous, and we're way underserved in this country, way underserved. Bismarck's the one that set the age of 65 as the retirement age. That was the model that Roosevelt used years later in the New Deal for Social Security. Nobody lived to that age. Nobody lived to that age in 65 when FDR passed it in 33. That's why all these pinheads in Washington need to get about their business and raise it to 67 and 70. It is the most, if you raise it to 67 and phase it into 68, 69, and you leave the ones 55 and under, it's a no-brainer, and it fixes Social Security overnight. It doesn't fix Medicare, but it does fix Social Security. And it'll happen. We'll reach that tipping point once the AARP and some others calm down. You'll find I'm not without opinions. Just because you get old doesn't mean you have to give up your hopes and aspirations. John Glenn went into space the second time at age 77. True story, Dennis Tito at age 70 wrote a big check because he could afford to, and he went into outer space. I can't tell you how many people over the age of 100 live with us today. I met a lady in our Gainesville, Georgia building, Ms. Wiggins, Mama Wiggins they called her. A picture here on her nightstand. Baby in a christening gown, sitting on a mother's lap next to a man with a beard. I said, Ms. Wiggins is 102 when I'm talking to her. I said, the baby in the christening gown. She said, that's me. And I said, that's your mother? She said, yes. I said, who's the man next to her? She said, that's my maternal grandfather. That's her father. I said, what did he do? She said he was a Confederate soldier in the Civil War. It was a conversation that took place 3 weeks ago. We had a friend of mine, Sue Farrell, on the West Coast, runs a building that in Butte or Great Falls, Montana, just buried the oldest living American, 114, and he was walking around. They had a birthday party for him 10 days before. He finally just gave out. But we literally have dozens of those folks living with us. Take a few minutes and let's just talk about who our customers are and piercing through some of the mythology. Interesting, just on the capital side of the business, Lehman Brothers goes broke in the third quarter of 2008, September of 2008. World goes to heck in a handbasket. Everybody's in this room's 401ks go down 40% over the next year and a half. We drove occupancy up 2 percentage points over that next 2-year period. It was very strange. You could see, we watch on the private pay side of the business, we watch the consumer sentiment index a lot. You could see in the fourth quarter calls stopped coming into the community. Not 100%, but they stopped coming into the communities. Fourth quarter over third quarter over second quarter, curve goes like this. You could see first quarter of 2009, they're holding tight, nobody's calling. But by the spring, grandmother's fallen 3 times. Or she's eloped, she's walked out and it scared the dickens out of Cynthia, her daughter. Or something's fallen and broken her hip. And I call it a rubber band syndrome. They pulled the rubber band back so far, but ours is a need-driven business, and at some point, nobody chooses to come to live with us. My wife says she'll never come to live with us. That's also a myth and a bunch of bunk, because she will statistically if she lives that long. But that rubber band, you can only hold it back so far because it is a need-driven business. When dad falls and breaks his hip, or when dad passes and mother's alone and daughter's living in Phoenix and is afraid for her well-being, they will make that decision. It's that kind of nexus. And so the issue of the economy, it's not a recession-proof business, but it's fairly inelastic, or it keeps driving through the recession in that sense. Now, where you get pressure, you'll get pressure on rates and you'll get pressure on wages, and that causes problems, particularly when health insurance and malpractice insurance premiums and other things and energy costs continue to go up. But people will spend their money for your service. If you've got a quality service, they will spend your money. And the elderly generation that's alive today, the silent generation, is the wealthiest generation in history. Overwhelmingly, they own their homes. Overwhelmingly, they have no mortgages on their homes. So now, it's interesting. We're a large provider, 1,100 units in San Diego County, one of the 4 or 5 worst housing markets. So you would see slowdowns and move-ins out there. It is a direct connection on the private pay side to the housing markets because they couldn't sell their home and they couldn't get at that $300,000 in savings. But even then, Pat and his brothers step up, and we see that dynamic over and over again, and they will write the $4,000 a month until such time as the home sells. So there's an enormous amount of wealth. What 75% of our customers want is they want peace of mind. And I tell our folks all the time, nobody, unless they're a schmuck, nobody wants to put their mother in the 4th best assisted living or skilled nursing community in town. Nobody asks that question during the sales process. No, when they're going to Four Courts, one of John's buildings over in the Highlands, or if they're coming to Jefferson Place, one of ours, or anybody's in their Masonic home, they want to know about service, they want to know about safety, they want to know about security. Price matters, you can't be out of the marketplace, but it's not the largest driver of what they want. They want peace of mind and security. 2 customers here. And you have, the middle essence is a Ken Deichwald term, and he refers to guys like me that body-wise we're 58, but sort of in our heads we're 38. It is that and the other thing that we talk about a lot in our business, there really are 2 customers. That the grandmother's the obvious customer, but she's not really the customer. Susan, you're the customer. It's that adult daughter. It's Francie, my wife. And you've got to satisfy her, and you've got to understand her. And that's about it's a little bit about, but it's about smell and feel and food service and the way the place looks and the way the aides work and little things like, is there something in my mother's room if she's there for temporary rehab that will tell you the names of the aides, the same things people work on, same customer service in Norton's Hospital and Jewish Hospital and Baptist and all the hospitals in town. So you're talking to a very different customer today, this adult child. Whoops. Let's see if I can take that one back one. There we go. This is who lives with us. It's the silent generation. That's who's in our communities today. They were born in those years. They were born before television. They won the war. Like my dad, they were all educated on the GI Bill. They're very much team-oriented. They think of themselves that way. They're not brattish like my generation can be. Very traditional families. They stayed married. They did a better job at all that than the boomers did. They lived through the Cold War. They're very stoic. They don't complain. They really are not a complaining generation. And they lived and believed. They weren't as cynical about the leadership that ran the country or ran their institutions. They won Iwo Jima. They lived through Sputnik. Their families did look like Ozzie and Harriet. A few of the crazy ones had bomb shelters. They lived in subdivisions, tract homes, all that stuff. They believed in him. They believed in him. And then we came along, and we're the other customer. We're born between 46 and 64. We all believe in Dr. Spock. We want our children to be perfect. We eat out a lot. We eat junk food. Everybody's on the pill. We're really cynical about politics. We eat there. Shouldn't, but we do. We've been to outer space. He made us cynical. Sorry. We're anti-authoritarian. We break rules. We're fairly individualistic. We're not joiners, particularly like our parents. I mean, you look at church rolls and church attendance today. We are idealistic. I mean, there's the, you know, a lot of my generation are Peace Corps and and civil rights and different views on gay rights and other issues that maybe the other generation didn't have. We are dramatic, and we do complain a lot. My dad, when he was recruited to join the Army, he wasn't recruited, he was drafted, but his generation, that was the advertising for the silent generation. Come join this team. We want you for the United States Army. My generation, be all that you can be. It's a complete 180 turn of sort of the marketplace and how we look at it. We're multi-generational families today. We all have, the families are complicated. We got 30-year-olds don't leave. They're like flypaper. They keep coming back. And so we have these sort of Rubik Cube families. That makes living and where grandparents live complicated. We have a kind of a joke. It's not a funny joke, but kind of a joke inside the business. Some of you will nod your heads. Whenever you have a negligence issue or a complaint or somebody gets hurt, or let's say it's a gray area and a mistake was made that we're responsible for, and we try to practice a policy of early intervention and apologizing for it. The daughter who's been in town, who lives in Louisville and has visits regularly and understands, she understands because she sees the face of the caregivers. It's always the daughter in Scottsdale that just has her boot in your backside. So the families are complicated today because with dual income families and with mobility, we're taking care of lots of grandmothers and grandfathers that are not visited and don't have anybody to come around and see them. So the issue of how you can't warehouse folks in skilled nursing, and I'm not saying they ever were, but the whole notion of socialization and customized care and eating meals when you want to eat meals and having fresh coffee that you would drink that hadn't sat in that burner thing all day long. And all those little things matter a lot. Her biggest fear is not dying. Most of our customers, and they're overwhelmingly female. They're still, now by the time I get there, the curve does come together, Vicki. You'll be about 50-50 when you and I are there. But today it's about 3-to-1 women to men. Coming caregiver crunch. You know, Ron Crouch, Jim, as you know, talks about the upside down pyramid. We don't have enough young people paying enough taxes to take care of everybody, and we don't have enough young people working in these communities. I tell our folks all the time, if you read our mission statement, we talk about 2 stakeholders, and I had it dead wrong in the first 5 or 6 years of this business. I was just a lawyer business guy, and I would have told you that the most important stakeholder is grandmother. It's not. Not every grandmother grows up to be a nice person. Most of them do, but there's a few that get rather difficult. You cannot succeed in the senior housing business unless you understand who the most important stakeholder is, and it's that caregiver. It's a woman, and they are 89–90% female, and they're making between $8 and $12 an hour in most markets, and they do all the work that we won't do for a living. They are cleaning your mom's bottom and brushing her teeth and brushing her hair, and they're holding her when she's alone. And it is, if companies, and we work hard at it, we're not perfect. Gary, I know you work hard at it, and others do. You've got to do all the obvious things. You've got to pay, and you've got to provide benefits and all of that. But it is a very local business in the sense that it begins and ends with the leadership in the community and the treating of people with dignity and respect and honoring them. I spent 15 minutes today signing 30 diplomas for a recognition thing for a lady, and you know, you all are a professional white-collar crowd, and I'm sure you get thanked and attaboys and attagirls all the time. These folks